I became a night watchman in a cursed building. What I discovered haunted me forever. The Spencer Community Center loomed like a bad memory, its crumbling bricks whispering secrets of the forgotten. I was desperate, a father of two with bills piling high and a job that vanished like smoke. As I stepped through the cracked glass doors for my first night shift as a night watchman, dread churned in my stomach. The darkness beyond seemed alive. Watching. At first, I chuckled at the legends. Haunted by the spirits of missing children, the townsfolk said, shaking their heads, but desperation pushed me to laugh it off. Yet, each creaking step echoed in alarm. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows down the empty, worn hallways, bending reality into strange shapes. I rubbed my arms, feeling the cold seep in, but I had to push through. The kids needed me. The gym was vast, a relic filled with memories of laughter now replaced by an unsettling quiet. As I traversed the space, a shiver ran down my spine. Was that a whisper? I leaned closely to the wall, straining to hear. Nothing. Just the hum of the aged lights. I took a deep breath, shaking my mind clear. I was imagining things. It was just an empty building, right? Weeks passed, and unease gripped me tighter. My family's photographs, smile-ridden and warm, started appearing on these decrepit walls. One night, I caught a glimpse of my daughter's giggling face trapped in a peeling frame, the playful innocence now twisted, almost mocking. My heart quickened, sweat trickled down my back. What did the building want with me? I was losing my grip, determined to confront the unsettling turns of fate. I spent nights researching that old monument of despair. I stumbled upon tales of a man adored by the community, a youth mentor turned predator, his dark side covered by whispers of fear and silence. The mayor, a figure once trusted, seemed wrapped in a web of lies. How deep did the rot run? I felt it, pooling around me as the walls echoed my rising terror, mirroring my doubts about who I could trust. Then came that stormy night. Rain lashed against the windows as I braced myself for my most frantic shift yet. The electricity crackled, plunging the building into darkness. I thought of my children, safe at home, but in the grip of my nagging fears. Warnings echoed, stay away, leave now. But the pull of the darkness was too strong. Finally, I stood at the threshold of the main hall, heart racing like a drum echoing against the walls. Suddenly, lights burst back to life, flooding the room. There they were, the shadows. Dark figures moved in the corners, grotesque caricatures of my own children. Grinning, they reached for me, their mouths twisting in malice, painting the kind of horror no story could prepare you for. What do you want from me? I gasped, panic clawing at my throat as the shadows surged forward. The very air felt heavy, suffocating. I stumbled backward, but the darkness followed, greedy and relentless. Every ounce of desperation clawed at me, a desperate plea pushing through my battered soul. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a trap, a web spun from despair and betrayal, and now it was closing in. My breath came in short gasps as I fought against the encroaching void, realizing with chilling clarity that even the light couldn't save me anymore. In that moment, the silence roared louder than any scream, and I caught glimpses of an unmistakable truth lurking in the shadows. Chapter 2 awaited, whispering promises of unraveling horrors. What lay inside this cursed building, and what price would I pay to uncover its secrets? The shadows loomed large, stretching their black fingers towards me, each contorted shape a grotesque mockery of everything I loved. Heart pounding, I turned and ran down the hallway, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness. My footsteps echoed like a countdown, each thud a reminder that I wasn't just fleeing shadows. I was running from the very essence of fear. As I sprinted, the fluorescent lights blinked erratically overhead, casting errant glows that revealed more of the building's cruel edges and peeling paint. I could feel the shadows in the periphery, lurking, waiting for an opportunity to pounce, their whispers like venomous breaths teasing at my ears. Come play with us, they seemed to say, their voices sultry and sweet, a mocking parody of my children's laughter. It was as if they relished my torment, relished that I was terrified. That I barreled into the gym, the cavernous space swallowing me whole. The smell of mildew filled the air, mixed with something coppery and pungent that made my stomach churn. In the center of the room, in stark contrast to the dimness, lay a single spotlight illuminating a chalk-drawn circle. I froze, the hairs on my neck standing tall. It looked like a child's play area, but somehow it felt more like a summoning circle, an invitation to the abyss. Tread carefully, a whisper prickled the back of my mind, wrapping tendrils of dread around my heart. Had I just heard my own thoughts? I started to back away slowly, unwilling to be drawn in. The room seemed to pulse, twisting and turning in on itself as if the building were alive, each breath a deliberate effort to keep its prey close. Then it happened, an overwhelming rush of fear surged through me, paralyzing. I lost track of time, caught in the haze of an unseen gaze. Darkness ebbed and flowed at the edges of my vision, and for a moment, I felt as if the building desired to absorb me entirely, to consume my very essence. I clasped my hands over my ears, willing the whispers to fade, the shadows to retreat, but they only intensified, like a storm brewing furiously outside. Suddenly, a figure detached itself from the wall to my left. It moved fluidly, gliding closer, and amidst the shadows, I recognized a face. It was my daughter's smile, twisted and stained, her eyes pools of despair that reached deeper than the darkest depths of the ocean. I collapsed to my knees, while rising in my throat. "No, stay back," I screamed, yet my voice was swallowed by the lurking shadows. "Daddy!" The apparition shrieked, reaching out with tiny hands, her voice piercing like icicles through my heart. "Why did you leave me?" It was an agonizing question, one I both feared and somehow expected. I was overcome with despair. How could I save my children when I was trapped in a place that devoured light and hope? The shadows snickered, closing in tighter. I could feel their icy breath on the back of my neck. My mind raced for a plan to escape this nightmare, but the truth hit me like a punch. The building wanted me to succumb. It wanted to prey on my pain, to turn my love into weaponry against me. I struggled to stand, my breath hitching. "I want to give in," I shouted defiantly, but the words felt hollow against the overwhelming presence of horror surrounding me. As the figures lunged, I felt a strange pull behind me, a rush of cold air that beckoned me deeper into the darkness. My decision hung in the balance, to face the paralyzing terror that surrounded me, or to abandon everything I held dear for one last desperate attempt at freedom. Each heartbeat echoed in my ears. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of 1,000 shadows upon my shoulders. Which path would I choose? And would it lead me closer to salvation or straight into the depths of despair? Behind me, the dark whisper called again, "Join us," and the promise of unknown horrors beckoned. I knew I had to act, but would I dare step into the depths of the shadowy unknown? Before I could decide, the ground beneath me trembled, shaking the very foundations of my sanity. What would the cursed building show me next? The end was near, and I could already feel the grip of fate tightening. I staggered backward, the tremor underfoot jarring my senses. The air thickened, a heavy mantle of dread wrapping around my chest, squeezing tighter with each breath. My eyes darted across the gym, the shadows morphing, swirling like smoke. I couldn't tell where they ended, and I began. The thought of facing my daughter's wretched image again sent a shudder down my spine. More whispers joined the cacophony, a chorus of tormented souls feeding off my uncertainty. "Help us," they cried, their voices intertwining into a dissonant melody that clawed at my sanity. I clutched my temples, teeth grinding together. Would I succumb to this madness? Would I give in? Don't look. Just run." A voice, not my own, roared from within. It propelled me into motion, nearly stumbling as I darted toward the opposite side of the gym, heart racing like a hummingbird. That I flung open the door, plunging into a dark corridor. The fluorescent lights flickered and sputtered, dying one by one, leaving only patches of pale illumination that painted the walls with grotesque shapes. It felt as if I were enclosed by a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of my own panic. Each breath tasted of rust and decay, the air heavy with despair that clung to my skin. Suddenly, I heard a laughter that sent ice coursing through my veins. It wasn't just any laughter. It was my children's laughter, tainted and mocking. "Daddy, where are you?" The sound rippled through the walls, reverberating like a taunt, a challenge. "Come play with us." Fueled by desperation, I sprinted down the narrow hall, navigating the other remaining doors with shaky hands. "Focus," I thought. each shout in my mind drowning out the shadows that grasped at my heels. I dared not look back. The corridor twisted like a worm, a never-ending nightmare. I reached another door, splintered and battered. The laughter grew louder, more insistent. I grasped the handle, the cold metal shocking me back to reality, and pushed it open. A classroom. Desks and chairs littered the space, overturned, like remnants of a scuffle. Charts covered in faded letters read education is freedom, but felt like prison bars. The windows were bricked up, no escape. The only sound was my own heavy breathing interspersed with the distant laughter that sent my heart racing again. But something gleamed in the corner, the remnants of a toy, my daughter's favorite stuffed bear. I rushed over, fingers trembling as I picked it up. It felt wrong. Too cold, too heavy. The eyes stared back at me, wide and accusing. Within an instant, my grip failed, the bear dropping to the floor with a soft thud. A presence loomed behind me, dark and suffocating. I spun around, and for a brief second, I saw her, a glimpse of my daughter, her tiny frame engulfed in shadows, her eyes pleading, glistening like black pools. "Why did you leave, Daddy?" Her voice cracked through the air, chilling every inch of me. Suddenly, the room sounded with a chorus of cries. "Help us! Help us!" The voices grew louder, forming a tide that crashed around me, drowning any sense of reason. In that moment, clarity slammed into me. I was not just running from darkness. I had become an unwilling guardian of its secrets. Each step I took led strangely to the center of the building, the heart of this twisted monstrosity that hungered for my fear. What if the shadows weren't just shadows? What if they were memories, fragments of the lost that this cursed place had swallowed whole? The familiar orbit of despair wrapped me tightly. With a surge of adrenaline, I dashed towards the door on the other side, knowing the answers lay just beyond whatever this torment was. Breathless, I turned the knob and pushed it open. Light flooded the room, blinding me momentarily. But somewhere in that brilliance, I sensed a deeper darkness, a pulse, a call. Would it show me the truth of my family, or drag me down further, into the abyss? As I stepped through, reality warped. Would I find my children alive or lost? The shadows clawed at my heels, a sinister promise echoing behind me. "You can't leave us." And in that moment, I understood. They were not just calling out for help, they were calling for me. I stepped into the light, blinking through the blinding haze, feeling like I was emerging from the depths of a nightmare. The room was vast, almost cathedral-like, stretching endlessly above me. Dust motes danced in the stagnant air, illuminated like distant stars. But the beauty was a fierce illusion. There, ahead, shadows pulsed and writhed, obscuring a sense of peace. "Daddy?" The voice echoed again, haunting, dripping with despair. The familiarity sent a shock through my spine. I turned, desperately seeking my daughter among the waves of darkness. "Please help us." My pulse quickened, and I stumbled toward the echo. Each step echoed in my ears, melding with the whispers that now felt alive, fingers reaching, pleading for release. The laughter morphed into cries, morphing from playful joy to a cacophony teetering on the edge of calamity. I fought the urge to cover my ears, to drown the sound in silence, but it sunk deep, worming its way into my mind. "Where are you, sweetie?" I called. My own voice felt foreign and empty, an echo lost in time. As I moved deeper into the room, a faint form emerged from the shadows. A figure, small and fragile, stood in the corner, shrouded in darkness. My heart soared and sank all at once. "Is it really you?" I whispered, a mixture of fear and hope choking my voice. "Daddy." The figure stepped closer, and in the fleeting moment of clarity, I saw the small face of my daughter, distorted and ghostly. Her features were initially sweet, yet twisted as if etched in midnight's ink. "You have to help us. They don't let us leave, who?" I gasped, stepping back. "Who doesn't he let you leave?" A breath of icy wind swirled around us, whispering secrets I didn't want to know. The shadows thickened, and the room felt alive, breathing against me, consuming all my rational thought. Then, she pointed behind me, into a chasm of darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. There they're waiting. I spun around, dread pooling in my stomach. Another shape flickered at the edges, which looked like the blurry remnants of my son. Panic surged like a tidal wave, crashing against my will to move. "Stay back." I shouted, but I felt powerless, as if tethered to a nightmare. "Daddy!" The voices cried. A rush of chills surrounded me, tugging my thoughts apart. Visions of my children's faces twisted through my mind like a film on repeat, smiling and happy one moment, sorrowful and accusing the next. "You left us," they cried in unison, an echo layered with grief and betrayal that I in my heart. I felt the crushing weight of guilt tighten its grip. I had been the one to abandon them, hadn't I? A game of denial twisted in my chest, clawing for breath. "No, please. I'm here now," I yelled, voice cracking. But it only summoned the shadows a step closer, their fingers creeping along my skin, wrapping around my throat. Suddenly, the light began to flicker violently, casting eerie shapes across the hall, as if it were alive, as if it were breathing. The laughter returned, a chaotic sound swelling to fill the room, drowning out my sobs. "Help us!" The words cascaded into a tidal wave, pushing against my sanity. "What can I do?" I screamed into the abyss. "Face your fears," came a disembodied voice, reverberating through the walls. "They feed off your hesitation." The shadows swarmed, closing in like a dark tide. Part of me wanted to fight back, to shove through the darkness and find my children, but another part quaked with fear, buckling under the unknown truths hidden in the endless black. Then reality hit. Each pulse of shadow whispered a way out, promising safety if I would only turn my back on what I refused to confront. How could I? Would I gain anything by abandoning my children again? I hesitated, heart pounding, breath shuddering. And just as I made a decision, the ground beneath me shifted violently, sending me sprawling onto the cold, hard floor. The darkness seemed to surge with pleasure around my crumpled form. With one last cry for my children piercing through the chaos, I realized my call was not just for them anymore. It was for me. As I lifted my head against the choking darkness, I finally spotted the exit flickering at the far end of the vast room. But the shadows didn't care about my escape. They surged forward, a tidal wave of pain and regret as they merged into a singular force, whispering, "You can't leave, you belong to us." I struggled to my feet, feeling the weight of 1,000 voices pressing down. The darkness quivered, and for a brief moment, I saw faces rise from within, those who had come before, claiming their place among the forsaken. They were trapped, just like my children. I sprinted toward the exit, breathing heavily. But the shadows clawed at my legs, tripping me up. "Don't let them take you too," my daughter's voice cried, echoing through the chaos. I was so close to the door, yet so far from freedom. Would I step into the light, leaving the horror behind? Or would the darkness consume me, chain me to their memories forever? With one final effort, I lunged forward, and just as my fingers grazed the cold metal of the door handle, I felt the pull of the abyss behind me. What awaited me on the other side? Would the light lead me back to my children, or into an even darker fate? The handle felt cold against my trembling fingers, the chill radiating through my skin like a warning. I hesitated, staring into the light. It flickered, hesitant, as if unsure whether it could guide me or swallow me whole. The shadows, thick as a dense fog, surged behind me, their whispers rising into a hungry roar. "Daddy!" The cries of my children echoed, tugging at my heart. I could almost taste their fear, the desperation pooling like a bitter poison in my throat. I needed to choose. I turned the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a blinding realm beyond. Heart racing, I stepped through. It felt like breaking through the surface of water after being submerged in darkness for too long. The light enveloped me, and for a heartbeat, I thought I was safe. But then it hit a crushing realization. The light wasn't as warm as I hoped. Instead, it was a blinding spotlight, exposing a desolate world. Conceptual walls of white plaster closed in, stretching infinitely in all directions. I stood in a white corridor, stained by an eerie silence, so heavy it felt like breathing through a thick fog. "Where am I?" I murmured. Before I had a chance to ponder further, muffled cries tugged at the corners of my mind. I jerked around, eyes scanning the barren hallway. The walls pulsed dimly, shadows drifting just beyond my line of sight. "Help us!" The familiar voices scraped against my memory, raw and desperate. They echoed like fractured memories, shimmering with the faces I recognized. My children. "Don't leave!" I shouted down the corridor, racing toward the source of their cries. With each step, the shadows thickened, curling around my ankles like malevolent spirits intent on dragging me back. I stumbled, but the cries my children calling fueled my legs. "Stay close. I'm coming." I fought back, pushing through the gut-wrenching fear. The cries morphed, the tone shifting, filling with agony. "Daddy, please." Their voices twisted, piercing my heart like jagged glass. As I turned the corner, I was struck by a ghastly sight. My children's faces, not the sweet cherubs of my memories, but twisted forms of pain and longing. They stood trapped behind a glass-like barrier, mouths moving but their voices lost in static. Their faces were voids of despair, eyes wide with terror. "Help us!" They cried together, pounding against the invisible wall, their little fists battering in futility. I slammed my palms against the barrier, a desperate plea leaving my lips. "Please, I'm here. I will save you." But the wall didn't yield. Instead, shadows surged from behind me and coiled around my body, their cold touch like icy chains binding me to despair. I was helpless, anchored in place as their cries grew more frantic, echoing off the walls until my skull felt like it might shatter from the pressure. "Stop," I begged, desperation churning in my gut. "Please, I can't fail you again." My voice cracked, trembling against the wall that held them. Suddenly, the shadows whispered secrets that sent chills racing down my spine. "You can save them, you just have to let go, let go." The thought slid through my mind like a knife, slashing through my sanity. What did it mean? Images flashed a life where I never walked away, a day without regret. But the shadows pressed closer, pulling me deeper into a twisting abyss of despair where the only truth was their longing to devour my soul. "Daddy, don't listen." They pleaded through the glass, faces contorting with pain. With a fierce cry, I pushed against the weight of the shadows, fighting against the tide of despair closing in. I couldn't lose them again. As I wrestled with the darkness, the corridor shimmered, revealing another door at the end, barely visible beneath layers of haze. It pulsed with promise. Time slowed as I made my choice. Shoving through the fog, I tore past the glass barrier that held my children, the shadows clawing at me, pleading desperately. Just as I reached the door, I felt the full force of the shadows, a chilling rush as they latched onto me, pulling me toward the edge of oblivion. I threw myself against the door, the sound of shattering glass mingling with the cries of my children, breaking my heart and the darkness around me. Would I find salvation, or would I become yet another lost soul, fading into the whispers of the forsaken? I thrust the door open, stepping into the unknown, the weight of the shadows still clinging tightly. Behind me, the cries faded, replaced by silence thick enough to suffocate. As I took one step into the blinding light, what lay beyond that door? Would I find my way back to my children, or was I stepping into a hell crafted by their tears? The brightness swelled, enveloping me in an insistent haze. I stumbled forward, disoriented, feet unsteady as the walls around me warped and shifted. I gasped, hands clawing at the air, trying to steady myself in the midst of the blinding light. Then, just as suddenly, the radiance shattered. Darkness rushed in like a tidal wave, throwing me to the floor. Heart slamming against my ribcage, I crawled backward, breathless. The corridor, now a shadowy void, pulsed with an unsettling energy. "Is anyone there?" I called, my voice echoing off unseen walls. Panic gripped my throat, squeezing tighter with each second that passed. Silence replied, isolating me in the oppressive dark. It felt like being buried alive, a weight pressing down, smothering. Suddenly, a low whisper curled around me, soft and sinister. "Help us!" It was unmistakably the voices of my children, warped. They seemed to float through the darkness, tantalizingly close yet impossibly far. "No, no," I shouted, scrambling to my feet, panic surging through my veins. "Where are you?" The whisper faded, replaced by a mocking laugh that scraped at my sanity. The shadows thickened, swirling around me, deepening my dread that I pushed onward, instinct guiding me through the darkness. The cold nipped at my skin, teeth gnashing like wild animals hungry for flesh. The air was stale, heavy with a metallic scent that had me gagging. I felt like I was walking through a nightmare, each step further dragging me into the abyss. Then, light flickered again. Not the blinding flash before, but an anxious glow, like a dying flame fighting to stay alive. I turned toward it, compelled by an almost magnetic pull. As I approached, I recognized it. A door, ancient and crooked, splintered wood glistening with moisture. With trembling hands, I grasped the handle. It was warm, almost alive beneath my fingertips. "Please be safe," I breathed, desperation saturating each word as I turned it. The door creaked as it swung open, revealing dimly lit stairs descending into darkness below. Panic clawed at my gut. I hesitated, but the echo of my children's cries surged through me, igniting my courage. "I will find you," I yelled, plunging into the depths. The stairs spiraled down, an endless tunnel wrapped in shadows. Each step felt like a century, dragging me deeper into the unknown. The walls narrowed, pressing in, suffocating. My breath came faster, heart racing a drumbeat of dread. "Stay close," I shouted into the void. "I'm coming." But the shadows chortled back, accomplices in this twisted game. They whispered my fears back at me, taunting, "You will never find your children. You'll join them in despair." Despair? I pushed through, shaking with anger and fear, but with every step the cries became fainter, echoing like a broken record. Just before I lost heart, I stumbled upon a light aflicker at the base of the stairs. I dashed toward it, praying, fervently hoping it led me to them. As I reached the threshold, my breath caught. The room stretched out before me, a vast chamber filled with twisted forms. Shadows danced, writhing against the walls, showcasing a macabre gallery of figures trapped in torment, faces contorted in anguish. In the center stood a mirror, a great obsidian slab showing not my reflection, but a scene of my children knocked back as though by a fierce wind, their faces twisted in terror. "Daddy!" they screamed, enchanting and haunting, voices mingling with the sorrow of the room. "No," I bellowed. "I will not abandon you." As I stepped toward them, shadows lunged from the corners, swirling like a tempest, blocking my path. The room's temperature dropped, freedom slipping away. Behind me, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang, imprisoning me among the darkness. "Help us!" The children wailed again, their voices rising, carving through the air as I faced the mirror. All I have to do is let go with my heart pounding, and their faces burnt in my mind. I readied myself. What price must I pay to save them? But would it cost me everything? As the shadows coiled tighter, waiting for my answer, I once again felt the weight of their sorrow looming. Was there a way out, or had I sealed my fate? Just as despair threatened to drag me under, a chilling idea crystallized within me. Beyond the mirror, I sensed the truth, a truth I had to uncover. The darkness shifted, churning as figures surrounded me. Could I shatter the illusion and find my way to them? Or would I twist within the shadows for eternity? With newfound desperation, I whispered, "What do I need to do?" Then it whispered back, "You'll find out soon." The shadowy figures loomed around me, shrouded in whispers and dread. The mirror stood sentinel, reflecting not just my haunted face, but my memories. Each flicker of light revealed fleeting images of laughter, playtime, bedtime stories. They were not just my children. They were my heart, and they were lost in this ghastly realm. "Help us!" Their cries echoed again, piercing the suffocating silence. I reached out to the mirror, my fingers trembling as they grazed the cold surface. It pulsed in response, the obsidian shimmering as if it thirsted for something deeper. But what? Can you hear them? Can you hear their fear? The darkness breathed, pulling me deeper into its grasp. The shadows twirled, eager to swallow my resolve whole. I raged against the sensation of being just a pawn in this sinister game. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, pulling back, frustration morphing into desperation. The answer materialized like an echo. "Sacrifice." The word rolled off the slick walls, slippery and poisonous. As the whispers layered around me, I could feel the weight of a decision pressing against my chest. Each heartbeat drummed the unyielding rhythm of panic. "No, I will not. I will save them without sacrificing anything." But already, the shadows seeped into my thoughts, molding my fears into visions, the faces of my children, eyes wide with terror, trapped forever. The thought was unbearable. I couldn't let that happen. I clenched my hands into fists, adrenaline fueling the fire of my determination. What if I break the mirror? The suggestion pierced my thoughts, clashing against the enveloping darkness. Could it work? Break it and seal your fate, the voices crooned, seductive in their maliciousness. Then, I remembered the warmth of the handle, the warmth of hope. No, I'll shatter this cursed existence. With renewed fury, I picked up a nearby jagged edge of stone, a remnant from the decomposing walls of the chamber. In one swift motion, I swung the stone against the mirror. It connected with a deafening crash, shards flying like daggers. The mirror shattered, releasing a surge of cold air that enveloped me like icy tendrils. A scream erupted, my children's cries became one with the chaos. The illusions writhed, their forms blurring, struggling against the shards of reality. I felt their fear resonate deep within me. I'm coming. Hold on. But as the glass splintered, I felt strange visions flood my mind. They weren't just my children anymore. They morphed into twisted figures, dark and hollow with endless hunger. My heart raced, fear gripping me like a vice. Daddy? A chilling voice whispered, unrecognizable yet achingly familiar. Where are you? Help us know. You're safe. I'm here. Desperation clawed at my voice, but its echo became a cacophony of nightmares, each reflection wrenching at my sanity. The shadows convulsed, dark tendrils unfurling and darting toward me like snakes, sensing vulnerability. I stumbled backward, air escaping my lungs as overwhelming despair loomed closer. Suddenly, the mirror's shards began to pulse like a heartbeat, reflecting not just light, but an energy, a dark energy. It enveloped the room, claiming everything. The laughter and joy twisted into cries of anguish, swirling around me like a tempest. Sacrifice, it hissed again, stronger, more insistent, filling the spaces between breaths. What did it mean? What was the cost? Every instinct screamed for me to run, but where would I go? The darkness had transformed the very air into a chokehold, dense and suffocating. I could feel the walls closing in, manifesting my despair into a living entity. Can I save them, or do I save myself? I whispered to the shadows, fear spiraling in my mind. The mirror shards glowed, illuminating a path I might regret taking. As dread clenched my heart, I knew I had a choice to make, one that would either lead me to salvation or drag me deeper into the abyss. But as the shadows surged forward, ready to lay claim, a new voice broke through the chaos. Soft yet commanding. Down here, it beckoned, echoing from the cracks of reality. With the choice lingering, I hesitated, knowing that my next move could alter everything. What lay beyond the call? Would it lead me to my children or further into the darkness? I took a breath, trembling on the edge of my decision. Would I dare to follow? I stepped cautiously towards the whispering voice, each footfall echoing in the deathly silenced room. The air thickened, wrapping around me like chains. With each breath, the cold tendrils of darkness coiled tighter against my chest. The dull glimmer of the shattered mirror was still alive, pulsating as if waiting. Down here, the voice was a thread of silk, weaving its way into my mind. I knelt, peering into the shadows pooling at my feet, the darkness swirling like a liquid entity. I steeled myself, afraid the shadows might reach out, pull me in. Follow, it urged again, more demanding this time. The reminder of my children echoed loudly in my heart. Was this voice a chance to find them? I had shattered the mirror. Was this how I could free them? The fear and uncertainty clawed at my sanity. What if it's a trap? I mumbled, half to myself, half to the shadows. But desperation screamed louder than any warning. With a deep inhalation, I plunged my hand into the dark mass, reaching toward the unknown. It felt like cold water, shockingly deep, pulling me in without any resistance. Suddenly, I found myself enveloped, and I could see visions whirled around me. There they were, my children's faces, flickering. Glimpses of laughter, glimpses of love, but also of terror glistening in their wide eyes as they reached toward me through an invisible barrier. The despair of their small forms being tugged away was more than I could bear. Help us, they called, their cries morphing into a chorus of anguish and fear. It was both a plea and a command that resonated through my very being. Why can't I reach you? My voice trembled as I yelled into the void. The shadows pulsed and twisted, revealing fragments of a past, a shaky house, a long-forgotten birthday party, their unmistakable giggling resonating like chimes in the wind. But threaded through those moments were darker images, Arguments, shadows lurking at the corners, the mirror casting reflections of things that had never been but were somehow still mine. Sacrifice, the voice hissed again, drilling into my psyche, invading my every thought. I wrestled with it, wrestling against my instincts. I had shattered something sacred, but in doing so, I had opened a path. Had I unleashed something too powerful, too malevolent? The air thickened, buzzing with energy, and suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled, pulling me further into the depths of the abyss. I gasped, gasping for balance, but I couldn't find solid ground. I clenched my fists. Desperation fueled a fire within me. In the chaos, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow detached itself from the swirling mass and knelt close to me. My son. His eyes were pools of fear, pleading yet unrecognizable, their innocence replaced by the darkness that had twisted through our lives. "Daddy," he whimpered, reaching out as tears streamed down his pale cheeks. "You have to find us." I reached back desperately, but the darkness tightened its grip around his small form, dragging him into the depths. "No," I screamed, a raw sound that echoed into the void. My fear was suddenly a sharp blade, slicing through the shadows. "Sacrifice yourself," the voice taunted, cold and merciless. Panic surged through me. What did that mean? What was the price I had to pay to save them? A memory flashed through my mind, my childhood, a moment lost in time, yet searing my thoughts like a brand. My mother as sacrifice so that I might survive. Was this the same choice? But as I stood at the precipice of despair, something caught my eye. A light flickered ahead, small and delicate. A way forward? Or a trap? My children's faces haunted me, their expressions of fear piercing through the fog of uncertainty. "Don't leave us." The shadows twisted darker, their whispers like fingernails scraping the wall of my heart. In that moment, the weight of their cries became unbearable, and I took a step toward the light, determined to find a way to save them even if it meant sacrificing everything. Would following the light lead me to my children, or was it simply a path further into the darkness? With each tentative step toward the flickering light, a pulse of dread beat in tandem with my racing heart. The whispers intensified, forming jagged echoes that clawed at the edges of my sanity. They were no longer mere murmurs. They roared around me like a howling wind, shaking the very foundations of my resolve. That I reached the light, heart pounding loudly in my chest, and blinked. The light revealed itself as a door, aged and splintered, casting a golden glow that felt both urgent and ominous. From its frame spilled shadows, dancing like moths. It beckoned me forward, but also warned me to turn back. "Daddy." The specter of my son's voice surged through the door, an ethereal cry that carried the weight of desperation. I gripped the doorknob, its cold metal biting into my palm, and twisted. The door swung open, revealing a room drenched in light, unlike anything I had seen. Toys scattered across the floor, reminders of simpler times. A table set with tiny plates, each bearing a piece of cake, untouched and perfectly frosted. In the center of the room, a party hat lay crumpled, abandoned, but the joy faded quickly. The light warped around the edges, flickering ominously. I stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind me, and the warmth vanished. Shadows began coiling in the corners like serpents. "Where are you?" I called, voice hoarse. "Please, answer me. Where are my children?" The laughter that once filled the air was replaced with silence, an oppressive quiet that smothered me. I felt the weight of eyes, unseen yet heavy, watching my every breath. Was this a cruel joke? A moment stolen from my memories, distorted and twisted? Then, from the far corner, movement caught my eye. A flicker, a shadow darting between the legs of a chair. My hopes surged, quickly followed by a shiver of fear. Because whatever had lingered in this space was not the pure spirit of my children. "Help us." A voice, distant yet familiar, echoed. It wasn't just my son. The voice was collective, a chorus of pleading souls wrapped in torment. I felt myself drawn toward it. Against my will. As I approached, a figure emerged from the dark. It was them, my children, but twisted, marked by the shadows. Their faces wore expressions of a deep, inexplicable sorrow, eyes reflecting a well of despair that pulled at my heart. "Daddy, you should have listened," they whispered in unison, their voices chillingly synchronous. "You have to choose. Us or you." What kind of choice was this? The shadows behind them writhed like serpents, hungry to consume. Panic surged through me. I stepped back, my pulse racing, heart pounding against the cage of my ribs. No, I screamed, the desperation clawing my throat as I staggered away, bumping into the table. The cake toppled, scattering crumbs like ash across the floor. I'll save you. Mom sacrificed for me. I won't leave you. Their laughter morphed into something else dark, a guttural sound echoing from the very walls. The shadows peeled away from the corners, advancing, seeming to stretch forth dark tendrils, snatching at my arms and legs, dragging me toward the door. Sacrifice to save what's left, they chanted, faces melting into distorted versions of themselves. I felt the knife edge of terror slicing into my resolve. My lungs tightened, words caught behind my clenched teeth. Was it too late? Was I already lost? Suddenly, from the depths of the dark, a shimmering outline began to rise, a figure approaching, cloaked in brilliance but casting an overwhelming shadow. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its presence heavy, ancient, watching, waiting. Choose now, it commanded, reverberating through every corner. The air shook, and the light began to dim. Mom, I whispered, my voice breaking. And just like that, the shimmering figure was gone, leaving only darkness crawling towards me, consuming the last remnants of light. With a fierce determination and a racing heart, I tore myself free from the grasping shadows. I stumbled backward toward the door, desperate to wrestle it back open. Daddy! Their cries echoed, merged with wails of anguish. What price was I willing to pay? What sacrifices had I yet to make? The walls of the room trembled, responding to the chaos brewing within. As I grasped the doorknob, ready to confront whatever lay behind the door, a sound pierced through the chaos, a chorus of laughter merged with sinister hisses. Remember, Daddy, every choice comes with a cost, they echoed through the tightening shadows. What if that cost was more than I could afford? I flung the door open, stumbling back into the abyss, and realized the darkness was far from finished with me. As it closed in, the specter of choice hung like a guillotine above my helpless heart. Why? I screamed into the void, but echoes were all that awaited me. The light had vanished, darkness enveloped my screams. And in that moment before darkness swallowed me whole, a familiar face flickered into view, its expression asking the question that sent terror reeling through me, will you join us? What was waiting for me on the other side? As the shadows loomed closer, I felt an overwhelming weight settle in my chest, a tightness that clawed at the edges of my sanity. The voices of my children became a whirlwind in my mind, echoing like a twisted lullaby. Daddy, where are you? Help us. Time slowed to a crawl. The darkness, thick and palpable, wrapped itself around my limbs, a suffocating embrace. I could feel the tug of despair trying to pull me back into the depths of the abyss. But somewhere deep within, flickers of defiance ignited. I want to let you take them. The roar erupted from my throat, a visceral plea that echoed against the walls of terror surrounding me. In that moment, clarity cut through the chaos. The specter before me, shrouded in darkness, offered only emptiness. But the light beyond the door glimmered, struggling against the encroaching storm. I could sense it, a chance to act, an opportunity to reclaim what had been lost. My children needed me more than ever. Without a second thought, I dashed toward the door once more. I could feel the weight of the shadows clawing at my heels, trying to drag me back. They don't let us go. The whisper taunted, laced with malice. But I was driven, heart pounding like a war drum. As I neared the door, the pleas of my children grew louder, a chorus of desperation. Daddy, please. With one fierce motion, I flung the door open. Bright light burst forth, enveloping me in warmth. It exploded in a radiant wave, washing over the darkness, illuminating everything in its path. I stumbled forward, propelled by an unseen force. And then silence. My heart raced as I stood in the blinding light. The shadow's insistent grip finally shattered. I was in a vast, empty room. No more whispers, no twisted laughter. Just brilliant light, like a firefly flitting in the early morning sun. I blinked, struggling to focus, trembling from fear and adrenaline. Was this the calm before the storm? And then I heard it, a giggle, bright and innocent. My heart leaped as I turned. There they were. My children stood a few feet away, not the tortured apparitions of my worst nightmares, but vibrant, full of life. Their faces beamed with joy, so real it pierced the lingering memory of darkness. "Daddy!" I rushed toward them, arms outstretched, taking in the familiar warmth that had been ripped away for far too long. I enveloped them in a fierce embrace, a moment filled with infinite relief and love. The shadows melted away in the presence of their light, dissolving like a fleeting nightmare at dawn. "Daddy, we knew you'd come." They laughed, their voices harmonizing perfectly, the echoes of innocence erasing the taunts of despair. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I held them tightly. Everything faded: the building, the darkness, the weight of guilt and regret that had chained me for so long. While relief washed over me, this sacrificial burden lifted, leaving only their laughter. "It's over," I whispered, disbelief persistent in my throat. I won't let go again. Not ever. Yet, a shadow flickered at the edges of my consciousness. The figure that had once loomed heavy with questions and regrets. It felt as if echoes of the cursed building lingered still, distant but haunting. But I wouldn't let them in. "Not today. I promise," I said firmly, pulling them close. "From now on, I will keep you safe." As the light enveloped us, a soft warmth filled my heart. The clarity of purpose flooded through the fight wasn't merely to escape darkness. It was especially for love, for family. The shadows had shown their true colors. They would feed on my fears, but they could never take what I cherished most. In that moment of triumph, I knew I had conquered more than just a haunted building. I had defied despair itself. And with that, we walked forward into the light, hand in hand, unyielding. But dear reader, hear this. Don't let your own fears bind you. This is the moment to support us. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm. Show your love. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. True fans understand the importance of these actions. Stay tuned, because your support means everything.